Well, all right, you guys, good morning. Welcome back to the channel. Same format as yesterday. We're going to get into a few headlines and then I'm going to open up the show to your topics. That was a lot of fun yesterday. And let's get into some of these news headlines first. Trump has gone full blown propaganda as he has threatened to pull media licenses now. Now, this is a first for an American president to threaten this. And of course, this is because we are now in the age of authoritarianism. Trump is the very definition of an authoritarian in things that he is talking about doing. He might not follow through with some of the stuff, but the word is out that he can pretty much do what he wants to. And what makes this makes one thing absolutely clear in my mind, that he has joined up with the deep state to continue their agenda. Otherwise, he wouldn't have all this power to make all these threats and follow through with this stuff if he was not part of the very deep state that he claimed he was going to go after and drain the swamp. So this is the headline here. Trump threatens NBC, ABC licenses over news coverage. Now, of course, ABC and NBC are left-wing media, and we understand that. But up to this point, these media organizations had some kind of immunity. The same way Fox News has immunity to stop talking about the Epstein files so that we can, quote unquote, get over it and move on. Now, if there was a Democrat president, would we want that Democrat president to go after Fox News and force them to cover the Epstein files? No. This is why media has some kind of immunity when it comes to these things. Because once you get into a president telling the media what to do, that, of course, falls under the label of tyranny. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm starting to experience reality fatigue. What am I talking about? Well, with the advent of artificial intelligence, we are now being bombarded with images, sounds, video of things that aren't real. It's literally as if we have to check everything that we see and hear to make sure that it's real or not. And it gets pretty exhausting, doesn't it? When you got to double check and triple check to make sure that what you're reading or seeing is even real. And the goal here is that they want you to retreat into a bubble. They want you to stop trying, and they want you just to take the word of the authority to tell you what is and isn't real anymore. And we should never give in to that. But I know exactly how you guys are feeling, because I'm feeling it myself, because I look at this stuff every day and I present it to you guys. So I have to fish through and filter through all of this stuff. And sometimes some of you unknowingly send me things that aren't real. They're fake. And I don't blame you, because it's hard to tell anymore what's real and what's fake. And this was all by design, because they wanted to give the appearance that it's become harder and harder to find truth. And so people just give in and they go, okay, well, we'll just believe the official story. Now, the irony of all this is that it was Trump who started the whole fake news meme. And this tipped off this entire era of reality fatigue. It's almost as if he knew that AI would surge in the next few years to even further muddy the waters. It's like he got the memo. So he started talking about the fake news before all of this went down. So why are we talking about this right now? Well, look at this headline. Will Smith, Mr. Turn the Other Cheek, Slap the Christ, The Rock, Will Smith, got caught red-handed, adding an artificially generated crowd in the backdrop of his concert promo video. Now, if you didn't know, Will Smith has just relaunched his music career. I can't imagine anybody would want to listen to any music that he's putting out right now, but apparently this is where he's going with this. I thought he was a decent actor. It'd be neat to see him in other roles, but now he's doubling down on this music career. Well, here's the problem. Nobody showed up to his concert. Let's refresh this and see if we can look at some video of this. And so they literally had to put a fake crowd, and some people caught this. Now, the good news about this is that people are awake and they're starting to see what's going on with all this. Let's see if we can flip through this. I think they show some parts of the concert in this story, or maybe they don't. I think they show that the slap there. That's crazy. Well, apparently, they're not going to show us the concert. But anyway, it's actually pretty funny because oh, here it is. Because you can actually see the fake crowd in the background.
The brighter the heaven you get to.
Now I'm going to mute that, of course, but look at this. I'll zoom this up a little bit. So this is Will Smith in his relaunched music career, and nobody shows up, and they had to put AI in here. Now, here's the problem. We aren't stupid. We know that Will Smith didn't come up with this on his own. He didn't go, hey, let's contact an AI firm and have them put a crowd in. No, this was the control mechanism. They're the ones that did this for him. They have to maintain the illusion that people still have money to go to these kinds of events, even amidst the backdrop of a failing economy. Nobody is showing up to music events in large crowds anymore. It's crickets out there because people are broke. Now, another reason why I think they helped Will Smith is because they have more work for him to do. Because Will Smith has still not reached his magnum opus, has he? His role that I believe will fit into another pandemic that will have a zombie aspect to it. And this is why they're programming us with zombie rabbits, deer, and squirrels, because they're getting us ready for the next phase. Wow. So, AI generated crowd. Now, get your requests ready because a little bit after we cover a couple more of these stories, I'm going to go into the chat and you guys are going to tell me what you'd like to cover today to finish up the show. The only caveat is you got to put your request in caps. And you got to wait until I come in here and ask for them. And then you can copy and paste your request until I see it. I'm going to collect as many as I can for as much time as we have left. And then I will go through them one by one. So let's get into this next story. This is crazy. So Trump and RFK Jr. to ban the 19 Cove smack the nation within months. You've got to be kidding me. Now, of course, this is a good thing, but it begs the question, what about all the people that are no longer with us? What about all the people who took the warp speed? You can't just sweep this away without acknowledging that you created it. So, in my mind, this is a flat out admission. If it's not good now, then why was it good then? This is unbelievable. Now, I'm not going to read this only because I'm sure YouTube is very sensitive about this topic. So we got to be careful how we cover this. Now, let me go back into the chat, get caught up with you guys before we get into these dust storms that have overtaken the Southwest at Burning Man and in Phoenix over the last few days. Unprecedented dust storms. It reminds me of the Dust Bowl. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the channel. There's Stacy, M. Pavo, Marcy, Kim, Silent Walk, Ken, Humorous, Josh, One More Quarter, Rebecca, Cannons, Tony B. So, is there anything you guys want to talk about until we get into the next part of the show today? Anthony says months, they could stop it right now. That tells you it's a bunch of bull. I agree 100%. And again, you can't pull something off the market and then not be culpable for the very creation of it. People should be going to jail. There should be people in prison. So, plague found in Cali, says Crystal. Yeah, we had covered some plague stories recently, and now they're saying it's in California. So, yep, too late. Too many people are gone. Says methadone free. Yep, it's too late. You know, I got to be careful how I talk about it, but you guys know what we're saying here. Heads need to roll, and it won't. It's a cover up, another cover up. So, thanks, Ken. Ken Walking in Heat says, I have been watching your fave list. Yes, I've got a bunch of playlists and things like that. I also did some Honey Milk Ranch footage for you guys this morning, and I'll probably upload that in the next couple days. I had to fix the electric fence, showed you some all kinds of cool stuff, you guys. Can't wait to show you that. Cheryl says the cancer vax will replace it. Probably. Oh, no, they're saying, too, RFK Jr. is saying that he's stopping research on the cancer vax, too. So apparently they found out that something was wrong with this technology. Let's look it up. RFK Jr. Thanks for bringing that up, Cheryl. Let's see if we can find it. I remember reading a headline on this. Going to the news. Okay, here we go, right here. RFK Jr. cancels promising work on the cancer vax. Interesting. I'll put a link to this story as well. So let's get into these massive dust storms. So if you didn't know, some of you might actually be at this Burning Man. I wouldn't be caught within 100 miles of this place, but some people in the truth community go to these events. Burning Man hit with massive dust storms. Now, Burning Man came on our radar during the Biden presidency, and we were looking at the rise of lithium. Remember? We found this mountain up above here. It was an ancient caldera in which they had a giant lithium discovery. It was supposed to be the largest in the world. It was called Thacker Pass. We saw that this volcano was up above Burning Man and Black Rock. And we found that it was actually this volcano placed Black Rock directly within its watershed. Not a lot of water out there, but it was downhill from all this. And then remember, last year or the year before, people's feet were burning from the chemicals. Well, that's all the chemicals, the lithium, burning the feet of the people. They called it like mud rot or something like that. My memory serves me correctly. But when it's all said and done, they could have been chemical burns as well. And then we pretty much predicted the rise of lithium before anyone was talking about it, before even the first data centers and battery plants broke ground. And we were talking about, too, how all of the states had sold out. It was a bipartisan effort. Republicans and Democrat governors were selling out their states to these lithium mines. Remember this? And the whole reason why we found all this, the rise of lithium, was because of our studies on Tlaloc, the volcano god. They would sacrifice one single person at the top of these volcanoes. And then they would do a lighting ceremony where they would light the eternal flame. And they would then send this flame, they would run throughout the villages and relight the entire kingdom off of this flame. And this is where we get the Olympic ceremony, the lighting of the flame. It all goes back to ancient sacrifice. And then we found that every year, one person at least dies at Burning Man. It's like the single sacrifice underneath the volcano. Sacrifice for the lithium, which is now the new gold. Lithium is the new gold. It is running the electric kingdom, all the electric cars, all the electric drones. And then we realized that it wasn't electric cars. It's the control mechanism. It's the electrification of the drones and everything else that they send up there to spy on us, as well as the grid. And that's the true purpose of the electric kingdom, is to maintain control over all of us. Because without electricity, without lithium batteries to run all this stuff, they would not exist. So this was the next stage of the enemy giving gifts out to the controllers to maintain control over us, because this is the devil's kingdom for now until Jesus comes back. But look at this. Burning Man. Dust storms everywhere. People are getting sick. They're stuck. They're miserable. Wow. Now, if you're unsure about the whole Burning Man and all the stuff that we covered about it, it was pretty profound. Those decodes were pretty profound because we looked at the Burning Man from the aerial view, and we also found how they lay it out every year. It's in a giant shape. I can't remember specifically. We covered so much stuff, you guys. But the shape of the Burning Man encampment from the sky, we even decoded that as well. We looked at it in Google Earth. And we saw how it was downstream from this ancient caldera. The burning of the man. So, Tlaloc would pull the heart, the beating heart, out of the man's chest, or the people that sacrificed to Tlaloc, and they would light the heart on fire. That is the Burning Man. Solved. So, we may have re-upload some of those Tlaloc videos. Some of you got sick of it, but it definitely led to all the discovery of the things that we just talked about. Now, who else is having dust storms? Phoenix, towering wall of dust rolls through Metro Phoenix, leaving thousands without power. I wonder why the power would go. Look at the images here, you guys. This is insane. This looks like a movie. You guys, this looks like, what was it? The latest Mad Max movie. Look at this. Remember when they go through the storm, the dust storm, to escape a wall of dust? Can you imagine? Giant wall of dust approaches the Phoenix metro area as a monsoon storm pushes the dust into the air, darkening the sky, blinding drivers, knocking out power, grounding flights. This lady was driving her son and daughter, aged 9 and 11. Oh, 9 and 11. There's some encoding right there. Home from school when the storm, known as a haboob, arrived late in the afternoon in Arizona City. She had to quickly pull over. The storm engulfed her car. She could taste the dust and feel the strong wind. This also reminds me of the movie Interstellar. Remember the dust scenes in Interstellar? Let's take a look. Dust Interstellar. Let's take a look at some of these dust scenes in Interstellar. Wait, movie. This was a central component in Interstellar. Remember the wall of dust? And compared it to the Dust Bowl, and then the plants started getting sick, and the world started to starve after that because of these dust storms. There was something in the dust. Predictive programming. They all knew this was going to happen. And this was the whole driving force behind why the astronaut had to go into space and find what was going on. Go to a black hole, find a new planet because of the dust. And then remember, the dust was on the ground and it was forming like patterns on the ground, some kind of Morse code that he was receiving from another dimension. So basically, the dust was intelligent somehow. Wow. Now, what else is going on? So we got the dust storms. Get into this story. License plate camera company halts cooperation with federal agents among investigation concerns. Did you know that the feds often ask these license plate reading companies for your information, and that they can track you? They can track your movements through the cameras and the license plate readers. I didn't really know this. So, let's say you buy 50 bags of fertilizer because you resell them on eBay or you give them away to your friends. Well, some federal bureaucrat can decide that they're going to request your license plate data from this company. And they can literally do secret surveillance on you. Let's call it what it is. It's secret government surveillance. They can literally be investigating you without you even knowing, creeping around your private life. And this is what I'm upset about with Trump. He should not have allowed this to happen, nor should a Democrat allow this to happen. We're supposed to be a conservative presidency. You don't allow these things. Now, here's a more likely scenario. Let's say you're a homesteader. Let's say you're partially off the grid. And every year on your tax return, you're spending less and less money and you're paying less and less taxes. And the feds just determined that they want to put you on a list of somebody that needs to be tracked to see if you're doing anything wrong. Just because, you fit this profile of someone that doesn't really want to be part of society. That could be a threat to the federal government, couldn't it? You see the problem here? There are no rules. There's no notification to the person that's being investigated that someone is secretly surveilling your activities. Now, some people believe, but if you're not doing anything wrong, why should you care? Well, ask yourself that question. Why should you care if the government is surveilling you? The answer should be obvious. It's the same reason why it was wrong for the Yazidis in Germany and the Russians and other countries who use it against their citizens. Because governments sometimes pass unfair requirements and laws. It's called tyranny. And they use this kind of surveillance activity to coerce and control free thought and behavior when the people rise up against them because of their unfair laws. So there's everything wrong with this. Now let's read this one real quick. License plate camera company halts cooperation with federal agencies among investigation concerns. This is Illinois, you guys. Springfield, Illinois. One of the nation's leading operators of automated license plate reading systems announced Monday it has paused its operations with federal agencies because of confusion and concern, including in Illinois, about the purpose of their investigations. Flock Safety, whose cameras are mounted in more than 4,000 communities nationwide. They put a hold last week on pilot programs with the Department of Homeland Security's Custom and Border Protection and its law enforcement arm, Homeland Security, according to the statement by its founder and CEO. Among officials in other jurisdictions, Illinois Secretary of State Alexei I don't know how to spell his name, raised concerns. He announced Monday that an audit found Customs and Border Protection had accessed Illinois data, although he didn't say the agency was seeking immigration-related information. A 2023 law, the Democrat pushed bars sharing license plate data with police investigating out-of-state abortions or undocumented immigrants. So they blocked it from being used for that. But what about everything else? This sharing of license plate data of motorists who drive on Illinois roads is a clear violation of the state law, he said. This law passed 2 years ago and aimed to strengthen how data is shared and prevent this exact thing from happening. They get billions with a B, of photos of license plates each month. However, it doesn't own the data that local agencies in whose jurisdictions the cameras are located do. And they're the ones who receive inquiries from other law enforcement agencies. So, now they say this is to fight fentanyl distribution. Well, why do we still have fentanyl on the streets then? Human trafficking. So they give us these ambiguous and hyperbolized, reasons that seem to justify the use of something like this. But in actuality, it's really just to spy on people. Wow. So here's where things are headed now. A couple more stories here. Trump says some people want a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we'd like a dictator. In case you had any question, there's the bruising on his hand that won't go away. Now he's got bruising on both hands. And what else? Venezuelans are lining up to join the militia in response to outlandish threats by the U.S. Venezuelans. Here's the Venezuelan militia. Wow. Unbelievable. Health insurance is going to go up next year. Trump said he was going to lower health costs, but apparently they're going to go up. Pricey Prescriptions and nagging medical costs are swamping some insurers and employers now. Patients may start paying for it next year. Wait a minute, weren't we supposed to have the cheapest prescriptions in the entire world? Isn't that what Trump requested for the pharmaceutical companies to do? Why is our health insurance going to go up? I'll leave a link to this story as well for you guys. And RFK Jr. promising to cancel. Oh, we already covered that story. All right, let me go back into the chat, you guys. And I want to leave time for an open request for you guys, and I'll start typing those in. And I want to start doing this kind of like every day, maybe. I think you guys really enjoy it because your voices are heard, things you want to talk about, not just what I'm presenting to you. So it's good to stay on top of this stuff and figure out what's going on. All right. So I'm ready to take requests. Remember, all capitals. Feel free to copy your comment and paste it back until I write it down. Chicago had a dust storm last night, and it's unheard of event. Mainstream news acting like this is a normal thing. Thanks, Kava Redeemed. Your voice has been heard. Screwworm, parasites, demonic hosts, zombie spiders, and insects and mold, says Tabby. All right. Screwworm, parasites. We're just going to put parasites in general. Okay, let's see here. What else do we have here? Greedy and control is their favorite game. Yeah, only put capitals if you have something you want me to talk about. Casey Dewey could convince the whole world to stop going to work, stop participating in its fake life, and stop the economy. Yeah. Well, I agree. How do we, okay. How do we convince the world to opt out? Okay. So I got 2 so far. And we'll take like 3 more. Baby Emmanuel Haro, don't know who that is. Okay. Any other capitals here? Oh, what do you think the next pandemic is going to be? Okay, next pandemic. That's a good one. Speak to that. All right, let's keep looking here. Weapon movie mentions parasites in the background. Yes, I saw that. We covered that briefly, but I'll speak to it. All right. Are they making plans to rebuild the temple? The temple, thanks, cannons. Question, Casey, truth is stranger than fiction. I don't know what that means. Bible study. What kind of Bible study do you want to do? The rapture. Let's put that. I don't believe in the rapture, but I will talk about it. Flesh eating bacteria, that kind of falls under the parasite discussion. Okay, what else? We'll do one more. I'm just writing these down on a list first. In fact, the Sabbath is 24/7 if you dare. That's kind of an obscure topic. I guess I could speak to the Sabbath. Okay. Child born. Okay, well, we're looking for cat. Okay, I think that'll be enough for today. Okay, let's start from the top. Screw worms and parasites. And you were correct. The new movie was talking about parasites and how that fit in to the mind control of these children that were drawn to this location. There seemed to be some kind of frequency component to this as well, because they were all drawn to a place where there was a radio tower in that movie that you mentioned. Now I can't remember the name of the movie. I got so much going through my head right now, you guys. So there's some kind of component to this, parasites and frequencies. Now, we all know that there is a cat parasite that cats spread that can actually mind control people to want more cats. And it's part of how this parasite is spread. And so we do know that parasites have the ability to control people's minds to continue the infection and to spread the infection. Now, it's not that all cats have this parasite, but this is why pregnant women are told not to have cats or clean the litter box at least, because these parasites can be spread and harm the child. But there's also such a thing as frequencies causing molds and fungus to grow. They've done studies on this, and they found when they shoot certain frequencies at molds and funguses, they can actually start growing much faster. And so there was a time where we dug into some research about the mold and fungus apocalypse. We had decoded a series of films that involved mold and fungus, and we found that this rise of fungus and mold seemed to coincide with 5G frequency technology. And we wondered if the 5G was causing the explosion of mold, not only people's bodies, but growing on things. Mold and fungus has always been around, but what makes it grow faster? So there's a theory as well. Now you can dig into that. That's a whole rabbit hole. If you do a search on frequency, radiation, or mold and fungus, there's all kinds of studies and stories about that. But back to these screw worms and things like this, the basic shape of some of these viruses is a coil. It almost looks like a spiral. We know that this spiral shape is like a portal. So, what is it a portal into? Is there a spiritual component of these screw worms? Heck, even Lyme disease looks like a screw worm. Let's take a look. Lyme disease microscope coil. This is the bacteria here, Borrelia burgdorferi, whatever. Let's see if there's some images here. These things portal into your body, right? They're very hard to get rid of. They're stuck in there. They get into the nerve tissues, the nervous system. This is what can control your thoughts. And in advanced stages, these things will literally start to cause twitching, brain damage in some extreme cases if you don't take care of this. It's absolutely insidious. And I believe many of these were made in labs. I don't think that this is something in nature. So there's the story on parasites and worms. Now, God says no weapon shall prosper. So what that means is if you are based in the spirit, you will not make decisions that allow these things to come against you. And I truly believe that our bodies, our temple is something that when we're grounded in God, that these kinds of parasites cannot take over our body. Well, now we've all seen this in nature. If you just go out and look in your garden, they say, things like getting water on the stem of a plant will increase you know, its succumbing to these kinds of infections and things. So a weak plant means that you're going to succumb to infection. So anything that you're doing to weaken your body, things like alcohol, too much alcohol, things like this, drugs, or things that are throwing your body off balance, like maybe certain medications, could cause you to succumb to these kinds of infections. So I hope that helped. Now, let's get into how do we convince the world to opt out. That was another request that one of you put down here. How do we convince the world to opt out? Well, this is why we talk about relevance. We've got to stop the control mechanism that is pushing false narratives through social media. This all needs to be revamped on some level. I've talked so much about, these platforms and why there are no platforms that can copy YouTube. Why are there no platforms for social media that can rival YouTube? Why are all the alternative platforms based in cryptocurrency instead of the ad platform that YouTube has? You mean to tell me none of these tech billionaires want to create a new video platform that's ad based revenue like YouTube is? There's something wrong. There's a deep state that's controlling free thought. It's making certain people relevant and most people irrelevant. It's throttling narratives that they want throttled, whether it's right or left. It's a paradigm. It's a set way of thinking. And anyone that thinks outside of that, they're not allowed to have a voice. That's the only way that we're going to convince the world to opt out is more channels like this. This is why I try to support channels that are outside the right left paradigm, even though I don't do a lot of channel collaboration anymore. I do try to support channels that are outside the paradigm because at least that's a start. Unfortunately, some of these channels aren't big Christian channels, so it's hard to kind of recommend them to you guys because the whole basis of being outside the right left paradigm is a Christ centered basis because he told us not to be part of this world. But that's the only way is convincing people to stay outside of the choices that we're given and to help organic, true popularity and growth shine through instead of suppressing it. YouTube switched over to a recommended feed instead of the original, which was a subscription based feed. In other words, when you subscribe to a channel, it's because you want to see that channel's work. And unfortunately, subscriptions don't matter anymore because YouTube has everybody on the recommended page. This is why I always tell you guys, don't go to the watch page, don't go to the recommended page or what to watch page on YouTube. Go to your subscription feed. You have to manually do it because it is not the default. And that's the only way things are going to change. Now, unfortunately, here's the caveat. The Bible says it's not going to change. So, but it doesn't mean we can't quit trying and can't keep directing people back to the gospel, right? But the Bible says it's not going to change. It says things are going to men's hearts are going to keep getting more and more wicked. There's going to be more and more unfairness. The least will be the greatest will be the least. There are dozens and dozens of scriptures that talk about the way that the end times will be, and none of it includes 3/4 of the world opting out of the system to gain back control over the beast. Instead, it says the opposite. It says, who can make war with the beast? Nobody can. The beast, it's obvious, has to be AI. There's actually a movie called The Beast, and it's all about artificial intelligence being the beast. So they come right out and tell you, nobody can make war with the beast. So that was a good question as well. So what is the next pandemic? I spoke a little bit to that a little bit earlier in the show. The next pandemic will have a zombie apocalypse component to it, likely on some level. There will be like wounds and sores and growths to add a little bit extra fear factor. Now, how do we know this? Well, all of it was predicted in the movie I Am Legend with Will Smith, ironically. We talked a little bit about earlier in the show. And that whole scenario was depicting a future event on some level. This is what I believe is coming. They had to ease everybody into it with this first round, which was already very difficult to go through. I did not have fun during the pandemic, very upset, but we all, pushed through it, didn't we? So many rights were lost. So many people were forced to do things they didn't want to do. People's jobs were threatened, people's income, people's children. It was a nightmare, wasn't it? And we all knew that they were going to, on some level, try to force this thing, and they pretty much did. A lot of people did not have a choice, or they thought they didn't have a choice. They weren't willing to give up their freedoms, and so they just went along. We always have a choice, right? But it's like, okay, you've got this, and this. You lose your nursing license, you lose your doctor's license, but yet you still owe $100,000 on your loan. What are you going to do? And now Trump's going after all the people that couldn't pay back their loans, garnishing their wages. So a lot of people would just give in, right? They just give in. I would never want to be put in that position. I can sit here and tell you I wouldn't give in, but until you're in that position, you don't know what's going to happen. Or you've got an angry ex that's, you get a divorce and they're like, during that era, 5, 6 years ago, had you went before a judge and say, no, I want to protect my child. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. You lose custody. This was actually happening to millions of families. And so people had to make a decision, didn't they? So that will be probably the next pandemic, in my opinion. It will have some kind of component to that with, some kind of zombie aspect, some kind of weird growths, some kind of attack on the immune system. But I believe that all of that will be just leapfrogging off the last pandemic because people's immune systems, dot, dot, dot. So notice that nobody ever wants to track those that got the it when there are these trends with, cancer and things like this and blood clots and all this stuff. No one ever wants to track if they had a history of getting it, right? Because if they did, we might see a pattern, maybe, just maybe. I don't know that, but we could, right? So now, next one. Cannon's asked, are they making plans to rebuild the temple? I tend to believe that when Jesus was talking about the temple, he's talking about our bodies. There could be also a physical temple, but I haven't really got into that or tracked that. And so I don't really feel comfortable speaking to the physical temple being built in the holy place. But I think it might have more to do with our bodies. Um, have I addressed the Noahide laws? Yeah, we've talked about that a couple times. That's where it's all headed. But that will be like the end game. That will be toward the end when they start instituting that. Once Trump pretends to go even more religious. But the folks over there at the Juice Club are saying that they love Trump and that he has been integral in helping to edge toward the Noahide laws. So we already know that that's a fact and that's what they want. And he's on board with them. So it's only a matter of time. The Rapture. So here are my thoughts on the Rapture. And I've shared this with you guys before. I don't like to say for sure it is going to happen or for sure it isn't. I do believe in a second coming of Christ. But the real question is, will are some of us going to have to suffer the tribulation and are some going to get raptured away? That is the real question, right? Because sometimes people get this whole rapture thing confused. They think if you say you don't believe in a rapture, that you don't think Jesus is coming back. And no, that's not the case. I do believe he's coming back for like a final rapture. The question is, are some people going to have to suffer and some not? And my opinion on that is that we should be ready regardless of whether or not you're going to have to suffer. This is why I prepare, not because I'm going to escape anything, not because I think I'm going to hide, but because there could be a time of trouble or you're going to have to power through some of this stuff until Jesus returns. So you got to be ready regardless, just like Noah had to be ready regardless, right? And so we as Christians should be prepared for either scenario. Because imagine your pastor has told you we will be freed from all the tribulations. Well, guess what? There are Christians right now going through tribulations, suffering, getting killed, being tracked down. It just might not be happening in America, but then there's the rest of the world, the other 8 billion people, right? So for us to think that that's already not happening, they're going through it right now, going, where's the rapture? And they're already getting chased down, you know, killed. They have to like worship in silence because you can't announce that you're a Christian because you could be killed. That's already happening. So where's their rapture, right? Now, so those are just some thoughts on that. The other thought that I have on a rapture where there's no suffering for Christians is that to me, it's kind of a narrow worldview from the American standpoint. It's something it's the churches sell because it's hopium, and it's a very narrow view that can only be believed in a situation like being an American. Again, in other parts of the world, Christians are beaten, tracked down, stalked, murdered. It's already happening. Now, the other thing is, we are a sinful nation. Let's just cut to the chase. We are a sinful nation. Even Christians, there's this new Christianity now. It's relative Christianity. So these celebrities, they put a cross around their neck and they call themselves a Christian, but yet they don't take away They don't cancel any of their old work where they were sinning. So all this stuff is still being bought and sold on the market. They are still, not acting like Christians in any way, shape, or form. But because they have the label, we're just supposed to believe that they're Christians, right? Because they got a cross around their neck and because they call themselves a born again Christian. Okay. So we are a sinful nation. Our churches have also sold out to the political paradigm. Okay. They've taken the money back into the temple. They're now being manipulated by politics. Most Christian churches you go into today, they might not come right out and say it, but they essentially got a lot of people to vote for Trump because Trump loosened up the guidelines on what churches can talk about. So a lot of churches said, we should go for Trump, right? So obviously that's sin. That's a sinful choice because Trump is not a Christian. He claims to be, but he's not. And so therefore, we have a situation, don't we? We are a sinful nation. Now, are there a narrow amount of people that are, much holier and closer to God's word? You could argue that they could be raptured, but then you got to ask yourself, look at all the other very holy people that we read about in the Bible. There are dozens and dozens of really holy people that suffered and died. It is appointed for a man to die once. And what makes us think we're special? We have it the easiest of any of the Christians in all of history, at least here in America. We have it the easiest. We don't have to wash clothes by hand. We don't have to walk dozens of miles a day. We have cars now. We have the variety of food that no other Christian has ever had except for king. We're basically like kings. We have the variety of food that was only available to kings. We have it easy in America as Christians. So it's kind of pompous for us to believe that God is going to spare us from all danger in the last days and all tribulation. That just seems kind of pompous to me and assuming and not very humble at all. A more humble approach would be, okay, God, whatever you have in plan for us, we know we have sinned. We know we fall short. If we have to suffer, let your kingdom come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we know that the end game is we get to be in heaven. So whatever happens to us in this life, it doesn't really matter because we know we're going to live forever and have new bodies after that. So we don't really care what's going to happen to us. The same approach that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had. They didn't care if they got burned in the fire. Why? Because they had complete faith. They didn't say, is God going to rapture us away? They went on faith. They didn't know what was going to happen, did they? So those are my thoughts on the rapture. Now, of course, people are going to have all these biblical verses. I'm sure I'm going to see it in the comments after the show today. They're going to bust out all these verses, which they say prove that we're going to be raptured and completely ignore the whole conversation that we just had about the rapture, which gives you things to think about the reality of the situation and the things that I just spoke about. And of course, some verses seem to suggest that maybe some people will be spared. But when you think about everything that I just told you, that helps you put things in perspective. It's better just to be ready regardless of what happens. Ready mentally, spiritually, physically. Okay? Because otherwise, the alternative is people are going to turn against God if they don't feel like they've been rescued. The first sign of trouble, the first sign of suffering, they're going to feel like God's forsaken them and they're just going to go along with the program. They won't even know how to handle it. So, what else? Okay, let's talk about the Sabbath. Someone mentioned the Sabbath being every day. My feelings on the Sabbath are this, and I want to be very clear here. Yes, there were a lot of ceremonial laws from the Old Testament that we do not recognize, but the Sabbath is not one of them. Yes, there were some Sabbaths that were in the ceremonial laws, but the Sabbath is actually the fourth commandment. We follow all the other commandments, the other 9 commandments, but for some reason, people don't follow the fourth commandment. Now, some people believe that Jesus fulfilled the fourth commandment and that we're resting in him. And I don't know how to feel about that. I feel like I try to recognize and observe the Sabbath, but not in the way you might think. To me, my personal opinion, I feel good in the garden. If I'm in the garden, like installing sprinklers, for instance, and I'll show you guys the new sprinkler system. To me, that's soothing. It doesn't feel like work. Some people would argue, oh, you're working on the Sabbath. No, it's me in nature with God and hearing the birds, getting fresh air, things that I normally wouldn't do. So there's one perspective of it, and it does kind of reset your body. You get to rest. Now, the other aspect of the Sabbath that I've considered over the years is this. The fourth commandment says, do not forget the Sabbath. Well, that seemed to have been a commandment also to all of mankind. The people in control are the ones that have shielded and hid the Sabbath. They've actually changed it to Sunday, the day of worship. So the enemy, the controllers of this world, are the ones that have forgotten the Sabbath. In other words, you don't really know what day it falls on anymore because they've changed the calendar. They've messed with the calendar. So they've already kind of broken the commandment. This is why we need Jesus, because this is where the grace comes in. In the Old Testament, if you broke the commandments, you got struck down. Your judgment was immediate because there was no intercessory. There was no Son of God that died for our sins to allow grace for when we break the commandments by accident or whatever, right? So that's the difference. Now, the other way, the other aspect to look at the Sabbath is that why wouldn't we want to rest in the Lord? It's like a gift. It's something positive. It's something beautiful. Why wouldn't we want to be close to him on a day of the week? Like, what's with all the resistance to it? Now, I can understand if someone was like, oh, that's a requirement. That shouldn't be a requirement. I get that. But think about this. What if your dad came? What if, okay, so let me give you a firm example. My mom, she's awesome. She's like, son, we need to start doing our Zoom call every week because I want to see your face. Now, what if I said to my mom, you know what, mom, that shouldn't be a requirement. I don't want to see your face. No, you want to do it because it's your parent and you know they love you. You do it to honor them and to commune with them. But for some reason, so many people are so adverse to communing with the Father on a day that he mentions in one of the 10 commandments. So you could look at it from that aspect as well. And that's the way I kind of look at it. Okay. So those are all the aspects. Now, here's where things get messy with the Sabbath. There's a whole YouTube universe, space, or whatever, of people that feel like the Sabbath falls on different days of the week and they're looking at the moon and the sun and it gets all confusing. Sometimes the Sabbath falls on Thursday, sometimes it falls on Sunday. And this really confused a lot of people. And God is not a God of confusion. They said, oh, it's not always on a Saturday that it falls. So you got to weigh that with a grain of salt as well. I try to observe on some level on Saturday. That's the day I try to like consider the Sabbath, okay, or remember it at least. So those are just some things to think about. Your father wants to spend time with you. Your father in heaven, the most important father you have, your creator. And maybe it's a good thing to try to observe it. Maybe try it out. Maybe not. It's up to you. This is between you and God. Okay. But those are some of the things that just popped into my head right now to consider. All right. Yeah, I just addressed that, Mark Man. Mark Man says Jesus is the Sabbath. Yes, people are saying some people's aspect is they feel like Jesus is the day of rest. I don't particularly agree with that, but that's how some people justify it. So they don't want to spend time with the Father on Saturday, the fourth commandment. So, all right. What else is going on, you guys? I guess that's pretty much it. That was kind of a long show today, but we got a lot of stuff covered. I appreciate all of you guys and all of your opinions about everything. Um, and this discussion was awesome. Please hit the thumbs up. We will likely be live tomorrow again. I'll put links to everything in the pinned comment, all the stories we covered. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Much love.